crowd around. That's the magic line right there. Not that one. Everyone always stops back there. Come on in closer. Don't be shy. Nobody gets to sit at the back of the classroom today. Now the biggest question we get asked at this park every single day, so do not feel bad if you ask somebody this already. Most people come in here and they want to know if Wilbur and Wright flew their airplane off the top of that big green hill right there. Makes sense. It would assist them. That's where we put the monument. But folks, hopefully no one out here has ever gone to an airport, sat down, got comfortable, then your airplane went off a big green hill and went like that. The Wright brothers said that's cheating from flight number 1. Once you put power to this, it can't use gravity anymore. It's got to take off on flat ground and climb itself into the sky. This rail right here is their runway. That's all it was. It was 60 feet long. Just this little beam you see in front of you with strips of metal on top. Then underneath the flyer was a set of bicycle hubs. So when the propellers would spin, those hubs would push them down this rail just like a train works. They called it Grand Junction Railroad. Orville knew he'd be the first one to fly that day, based on the coin toss. Big brother Wilbur gets to be the first wingman in human history that day. The engine weighed 180 pounds on the right wing. Orville weighed 140 pounds on the left wing. So as the flyer sits here getting ready to take off, it falls into the sand like this. That's why you see a bench in the picture. So Wilbur had to physically hold on to the right wing and run alongside of it as fast as he could until it took off. Because the Wright brothers love math, and the math told them to solve that problem and it'll fly, is just make the right wing 4 inches longer than the left wing. That extra 4 inches keeps the engine in the sky. You just got to get it up there first. So drive around the hill, get out of your car, and stare at that statue back there as long as you can and see if you can notice there's an extra 4 inches on that one wing. You'll never be able to. They got one more problem that day, though. And every one of you shares this problem on a vacation down here to the Outer Banks still today, all these years later. Who's going to take the best family photo possible? Especially if there's only 2 of you. Who's going to take that best family photo? This is long before selfie sticks out here, so Wilbur and Wright need a little bit of help. So Orville set his very expensive prized possession right behind you over here. The Wright brothers had brought the first camera in human history to the Outer Banks. Nobody ever seen a camera down here before. So Orville set it up and focused it to where he thought maybe the flyer would take off. Wilbur turned to the man right next to him. His name was John T. Daniels, one of the lifesavers. And they said, "Mr. Daniels, can you help us out today and take a picture?" And John looked back and said, "Absolutely. I've never seen a camera before in my entire life. Better show me how to use it first." So they put this little ball in John's hand and attached it to the shutter. And their exact words were, "Mr. Daniels, if you see this thing do a single interesting thing this morning, just squeeze that ball as tight as possible and the camera will take the picture." John thought he could do that. So Wilbur and Orville walked around the front of the flyer. Every witness said it was the longest handshake in human history. Like they thought they'd never see each other again. Wilbur leaned into Orville, whispered something into his ear. We truly don't know what he told him. And at 10:35 a.m. that cold morning, those propellers began to spin as the engine roars to life. And through all that wind and bitter cold, the Wright flyer starts to slowly move down this little rail at a whole 7 miles an hour. No one knew what was going to happen. They assumed it'd go all the way down this rail, run out of room, and fall into the sand, all the witnesses. The Wright brothers assumed it'd go all the way down this rail, run out of room, and lift into the sky. But just 40 feet down that rail, as an airplane is flying in front of you, this boulder is one of the most hallowed sights on planet Earth. This simple boulder right here is the exact spot for the first flight in human history. The airplane lifts into the sky where this little boulder sits. Got just about 12 feet into the clouds that first flight. Went to hold 12 seconds down the beach, which turned out to be 12 seconds to the stars. Then it softly fell back down to Earth 120 feet later at that first little stone you see right there. They got off the flyer and made it back over to Mr. Daniels on the camera, and they said, "John, did you get the picture?" And John, of course, looked back and said, "No." John was so shocked and amazed and excited and pretty confused. He told Wilbur and Orville Wright he didn't remember taking the picture at all that day. So they kicked John off the camera, and before they could take the rest of the flights, grabbed somebody else to do it. These first three stones are very close to each other. Everybody always comes in here and wants to know why. It's what we call porpoising. The Wright brothers have no idea what they're doing, just like learning how to ride a bike. So it's literally flying like a dolphin jumping out of the water. On the fourth flight, Wilbur was flying the fourth one, and he figured out what they've been doing wrong the entire time. And on flight number 4, he adjusted it, and he went 852 feet in 59 seconds. Their goal that day was to go 4 miles on one single flight. 2 years later, the Wright brothers can go 36 miles of flight. So we know they would have gone some of that distance if given a chance that day, but something happened. They drug that 605-pound flyer all the way back up here, leaned it up against the hangar over there, went inside to warm up, talk about what had happened so far, and nobody thought it was a good idea to tie it up to something heavy in a windstorm. And everybody watched at the same time as a gust of wind grabbed it and lifted it and flipped it and tossed it and shattered every single thing on it. John Daniels was standing outside, saw what was about to happen. So whether it was the Coast Guard mentality or it's because he thought he messed up the picture, he jumped in the middle of the flyer to redeem himself the best he could. And then John got flipped and tossed and tangled so far, he told everyone the rest of his life that he had taken the 5th flight in human history. Nobody ever bought into that idea. But John Daniels is officially listed and will always be known as the first human being to successfully walk away and survive an airplane crash. Always be known still today. So the Wright brothers walked down that 4 miles, sent their telegraph, then they left the next day. Got home in time for Christmas. Favorite thing in the world was to wait until March of every year, of all things. It was so cold back in Dayton, Ohio, that nobody was buying bicycles, so you had all the time in the world to develop your pictures from Kitty Hawk finally the previous summer. Wilbur said he got more of a thrill sitting in his dark room waiting for those images to show up than he ever did flying out here at Kitty Hawk. They never knew if they had blank skies, nothing but sand, or maybe one of their flying machines had accidentally flown through their viewfinder. And that morning in March of 1904, Wilbur and Orville Wright huddled together in a cold bicycle shop and slowly watched this develop.
Wow.
This is a photo that most of you have seen, I guarantee you. This is a photo that John Daniels said he did not take. John was so shocked, amazed, excited, and pretty confused about what had happened, he accidentally squeezed that ball in his hand. The exact second we went down that path together, they told us we would never go down. This is the only photo John Daniels ever took his entire life. Most historians believe that this or the flag raised at Iwo Jima just might be the most reproduced picture in human history. It was labeled the most influential, important photo of the 20th century. And it was accidentally taken about 10 feet right over there, looking right in front of you. Why is this photo so valuable still today? Why do we keep coming back to it? Because it shows us two things. The first is a birth. It's the birth of aviation. At 10:35 a.m. that morning, the world changed forever in that moment when we got this simple photo. Some of you just might have waited your entire life to stand here right this second, young or old. Some of you might have been drugged here today by that person in your family, and that's all right too. But this photo shows something powerful. It shows us a death. The death in this image, frozen in time, has always been there. And it has changed every heartbeat out here. Yesterday, today, and forever. Tomorrow. Sometimes we don't see it till we need it, though. This photo shows us the death of impossibility. Think of where you're standing right this second. You are breathing the same way in the exact same spot that two human beings were when they took the word impossible and they redefined it as forever, meaning it hasn't been figured out yet. So for some of you, you came here thinking this is about airplanes. A couple of you might have woke up with cancer this morning and you understand it greater than any of us. There's some little kid in the world that's going to stare at the stars tonight and be told no their entire life, they're going to walk on Mars. Some little kid in the world right this second is going to be told no their entire life, and they're going to cure your cancer. Two little boys were told no their entire life, and I think you guys just saw it fly in front of you about 5 minutes ago. If you truly do not think this is the death of impossibility, how many of you knew we couldn't do it one living life ago? There's a woman that woke up in Jamaica this morning who was 3 years old the morning Wilbur Norva Wright flew.
Oh my God.
We couldn't fly a heartbeat ago. I have personally spent most of my career in Yellowstone timing Old Faithful, and do not sell this national park short. This is the national park we proved eternal hope, that nothing on this planet will ever be impossible. We simply have not figured it out yet. The man lying on his stomach in this image, he flew 7 miles an hour down this beach at Kitty Hawk. Before he died, he saw Chuck Yeager fly 750 miles an hour, break the speed of sound. He saw German rockets touch space, commercial aviation as we know it today. He saw the rise and fall of nations through 2 world wars. Woke up one morning and read a newspaper article that said we just dropped an atomic bomb out of his idea at Kitty Hawk. And that morning he wrote the words, "We built fire." He said fire is very horrible, but fire can be very good. If you guys come back here in 10 months, we'll show you one of the greatest things we ever did with that fire. It lives in that little building right there. It's a little piece of wooden cloth, this big. It is part of the original left wing and left propeller of that very first airplane in human history. Not very big at all. But then you got to realize Neil Armstrong didn't have very deep pockets when he walked on the surface of the moon. We let Neil Armstrong take that piece of the Wright Flyer to the moon with him and back. Armstrong only had 2 things in his pocket when he walked on the moon. One was his Boy Scout badge from a child, and the other was a piece of the Wright Flyer. Neil said history's nothing but a mirror. All we can do is look back. And the reason we always look back is to appreciate and understand where we are going forward. I don't know what you good folks believe is the beginning of time, but that's how long it took for that little piece of wooden cloth to fly 4 times at this very lonely, windy beach next to the sea in Kitty Hawk. And then it barely had to wait a human lifetime to go to this lonely, windless beach at another sea we call tranquility. You guys didn't know in a hot, muggy field for $7 I'd show you so many impossible things out here today, did you? You are standing in the cathedral of impossibility. So for the last minute of this talk, I want to introduce you to this boulder. Of all the 600,000 visitors a year, most people just see a rock. That's okay. With the right set of eyes, some of you might be staring at the birthstone. Anybody a pilot out here? Oh, we get the same thing from every pilot. They come up here and act like a little kid and want to know if this thing's truly the Blarney Stone of aviation. Apparently, they all think it's good luck to touch a boulder in a field that was touched by Amelia, Lindbergh, Orville, Armstrong, Aldrin, Shepard, Glenn, Yeager, and the list grows and grows and grows. I will be glad to show you where they did that first, and 1,000 others you'll never know. Me, I see this boulder 1,000 times a week. I hear 1,000 stories a month. Sometimes we hear stories today that change our lives we'll never forget. Stood out here one day with a mother as she dropped her child's ashes all over this boulder. He was a helicopter pilot shot down in Afghanistan, and they were surprised to see in his will that it said, "Leave some of me at Kitty Hawk." Stood out here one day with a 10-year-old child. Some of you might be 10 out here. Some of you might have a 10-year-old. This little boy had stage 4 leukemia. And Make-A-Wish told this little boy he could go anywhere in the world. And this little boy looked at his mother and said, "How about Kitty Hawk?" He loved to fly. The Wrights were his heroes. So we met him out here a couple weeks later. He had a Superman shirt, cape blowing in the breeze. And he put his little hand right here because he asked us where Orville did. And he went home and died a couple days later. Truly was his last wish on planet Earth to stand where you are right this second. Then, not long after that, a family showed up with their father. Some of you might be here with your dad today. Their father was 103 years old. He had dementia and Alzheimer's, didn't understand who he was or where they were or what they had for breakfast. But the kids said, "Our dad used to be a pilot and we would love it if you would take a picture with him at this stone." And when we got their dad to this boulder, he saw these 2 names right there. And then he saw a couple airplanes fly above him. Then a couple of Navy jets dropped out of the sky real low. And then Dad rose out of his wheelchair. and told every stranger in this park for the rest of the day every mission he piloted in World War II. They couldn't get him out of here. Then the family called 8 months later and said, on the way out of your park, our dad forgot his name again and never remembered it the rest of his life. I can't even begin to understand or even talk to you about why they came. I have no idea why any one of you came here today. That's for you to decide. I will gladly tell you in the last 30 seconds why I come every single day. If this image truly does show us a death, and if you buy into that at all, you are looking at the gravestone of impossibility. Every one of you hopefully remember that. When some stranger looks you in the face and tries to tell you this afternoon is the day that you give up, that it's impossible, there's no hope, there's no cure, we haven't figured it out, there's no tomorrow, it is not worth it, don't try. If that day ever comes, or if it already has, remember this simple story of these two brothers, and that the legacy of Wilbur Norval has never been in the skies above you. It is in the sands of time beneath this stone, that nothing on this planet will ever be impossible. It simply has not been figured out yet. That is the true legacy of Wilbur Norval Wright. If that is all you remember from standing out here today, I bet every one of you can probably change the world. You're no different than a couple of guys who didn't finish high school who love bicycles in Dayton, Ohio. True legacy of two human beings named Wilbur Norval Wright. Some of you want to touch this, and some of you have to. If you're going to give it a kiss like some of those names did, don't go around the backside, because 5 seagulls kissed it earlier. But if you got any questions, come on up and ask them. If not, enjoy the rest of your muggy day in one of your national parks, and watch out for Jose, because we still don't know what it's going to do this weekend. Just keep an eye on it.